there was an animal that once roamed nearly every small farm in America. An animal so efficient at converting scrub brush and table scraps into high-quality meat and leather that a single breeding pair could generate more net profit per acre than cattle, hogs, or chickens combined. That animal was the American dairy goat, and specifically a now obscure heritage line known as the Tennessee fainting goat, crossed with the Spanish meat goat, a combination that by 1940 was producing more usable protein per dollar of feed than any other livestock on the continent. The United States Department of Agriculture knew this. Internal research reports from the 1960s confirmed it. And then, in 1974, those reports were quietly buried when the agency restructured its livestock extension program to favor confinement-raised beef and pork operations funded by the grain lobby. The breeding knowledge, the grazing protocols, the small farm economics that had sustained 3 generations of American homesteaders simply vanished from the official record. So why has no one told you that the most profitable animal you could raise on your land right now costs less than a bag of dog food to acquire and can feed your family on pasture that your cattle would starve on? By the time you finish watching this, you will never look at that brushy back corner of your property the same way again, because that rough ground you have been mowing or ignoring is not wasteland. It is a feedlot that has been waiting for the right animal to walk onto it, and the right animal has been hidden from you for 50 years. The story begins long before 1974, long before America was even a country. Spanish explorers brought Iberian meat goats to the Gulf Coast in the 1540s. These were not the delicate dairy breeds you see at county fairs today. They were compact, muscular animals bred for centuries in the dry mountains of Andalusia, selected over generations for one trait above all others: the ability to thrive on vegetation that no other livestock would touch. Thorny brush, woody stems, bark, dried weeds, poison ivy. The Spanish goat ate it all. When settlers pushed westward across Texas, Tennessee, and the Ozarks, they carried these goats with them. By the 1700s, Appalachian homesteaders had begun crossing Spanish goats with a peculiar local breed known as the Tennessee wooden leg, or fainting goat, an animal with a hereditary condition called myotonia congenita that caused its muscles to stiffen briefly when startled. This sounds like a defect. It was the opposite. The myotonic gene produced an animal with significantly higher muscle-to-bone ratio than any standard goat breed. Where a normal goat might dress out at 48% of its live weight, a myotonic cross regularly dressed at 57 to 60%. More meat per pound of animal, more meat per pound of feed, more profit per square foot of land. By 1920, small farmers from the Cumberland Plateau to the Ozark foothills were raising these crossbred goats as their primary cash livestock. They required no grain. They needed no confinement barns. They cleared land while they fed themselves. A family with 20 does and 1 buck could produce 40 to 50 kids per year, harvest half for meat, sell half at market, and use the surplus milk for cheese, soap, and barter. The operating cost was essentially zero beyond a few rolls of fencing. This was the most self-sufficient livestock system ever developed on American soil. Then the grain industry arrived. After World War II, American agriculture underwent the most dramatic centralization in its history. The war had created enormous surpluses of nitrogen, originally manufactured for explosives, and the chemical industry needed a new market. Synthetic fertilizer became that market. But synthetic fertilizer only made economic sense on large acreages planted in monoculture grain crops. And monoculture grain crops only made economic sense if there was a massive livestock industry buying that grain as feed. The entire post-war agricultural economy was restructured around a single equation: grow corn, feed corn to confined animals, sell the meat. Animals that did not eat corn were irrelevant to this equation. Worse, they were a threat to it. Every homesteader raising meat goats on brush and scrub was a family not buying grain, not buying chemical fertilizer, not buying confinement housing, not participating in the system that generated revenue for the companies that were now funding agricultural research at every land-grant university in the country. In 1962, the USDA's Agricultural Research Service published an internal bulletin documenting the feed conversion efficiency of myotonic cross goats on marginal pasture. The numbers were remarkable. These goats converted rough browse into meat at a ratio of 3.2 pounds of forage per pound of gain, compared to 7.8 pounds of grain per pound of gain for feedlot cattle. The bulletin recommended further study and suggested that small farm goat production could reduce rural poverty and food insecurity across the Southeast. That bulletin was never widely distributed. By 1974, the Extension Service had eliminated goat husbandry from its standard training curriculum for county agents. The reasoning was never stated publicly, but the funding trail tells you everything. The National Corn Growers Association had increased its annual contributions to USDA cooperative extension programs from $1.4 million in 1965 to $11.7 million by 1973. The goat simply became invisible. Now let us talk about why the biology works the way it does, because this is not folklore. This is digestive engineering refined over thousands of years of natural selection. A goat is not a small cow. Most people assume they are similar animals with similar needs. That misunderstanding has cost American homesteaders more wasted opportunity than almost any other mistake in livestock management. A cow is a grazer. Its digestive system, a four-chambered rumen, is optimized for breaking down soft, cellulose-rich grasses. When a cow encounters woody browse, thorny brush, or chemically defended plants like poison oak and multiflora rose, its rumen struggles. The lignin content is too high. The tannin load disrupts microbial fermentation. The cow loses weight. A goat is a browser. Its rumen contains a different microbial population, specifically a higher concentration of tannin-binding salivary proteins and lignin-degrading bacteria of the genus Fibrobacter and Ruminococcus. These microbes break down the exact plant compounds that defeat a cow's digestion. Think of it this way. Your land has two fuel sources. Grass is like gasoline, easy to burn, but you have to plant it, fertilize it, and maintain it. Brush and woody browse is like coal, harder to ignite, but it grows for free and there is far more of it. A cow is an engine that only runs on gasoline. A goat is an engine that runs on coal. And in most of rural America, you have a lot more coal than gasoline. The numbers bear this out. A 2003 study by researchers at Langston University in Oklahoma measured protein yield per acre on unimproved brushy pasture, the kind of land most homesteaders consider worthless. Cattle on that land produced 14 pounds of harvestable protein per acre per year. Goats on the same land produced 131 pounds. That is 9.3 times more usable food from ground you were not even using. The fat profile of goat meat is equally significant. Chevon, the industry term for goat meat, contains 2.6 grams of fat per 3-ounce serving compared to 7.9 grams for beef and 6.3 grams for chicken. Its iron content is 3.2 milligrams per serving versus 2.0 for beef. It is, by every measurable nutritional standard, a superior meat. And yet, the average American has never eaten it. That is not an accident of taste. It is an artifact of economics. The industry that sells you beef needed you to forget that goat meat existed. The industry that sells you chicken feed needed you to believe that goats were novelty animals. Your palate was not consulted. Your wallet was. Follow the money and the picture becomes unavoidable. The American beef industry generates approximately $79 billion in annual revenue. The grain-fed to American cattle represents roughly $32 billion per year in corn and soybean sales. The pharmaceutical industry sells approximately $4.8 billion per year in antibiotics, growth hormones, and parasiticides to the confined beef sector alone. The fencing, housing, and equipment industry adds another $6 billion. Every one of those revenue streams depends on the assumption that beef is the default American meat and that producing it requires industrial inputs. The goat threatens every layer of that structure. A homesteader raising 30 meat goats on 15 acres of unimproved brushland needs no grain, no growth hormones, no confinement housing, and minimal veterinary intervention because the myotonic and Spanish breeds are among the most disease-resistant livestock ever documented in North America. The input cost per pound of finished meat is between 40 and 65 cents, depending on your region and parasite pressure. The market price for Chevon in 2024 ranges from $8 to $14 per pound, depending on whether you sell whole carcasses or retail cuts. You do not need a calculator to see what that margin looks like. It is the kind of margin that, if widely understood, would redirect millions of small farm acres away from commodity grain production and into independent, self-sustaining meat production. That is not a theory. That is a financial threat to some of the most powerful lobbies in Washington. In 1998, the American Meat Institute successfully lobbied the USDA to exclude Chauvin from its standard retail price reporting, making it functionally invisible in official market data. If you cannot see the price, you cannot see the opportunity. If you cannot see the opportunity, you do not raise the animal. If you do not raise the animal, you keep buying beef at $6.49 a pound from the same system that needs your dependents to survive. Your grocery bill is not a reflection of what food costs to produce. It is a reflection of what certain industries need it to cost so that you never look for an alternative. But not everyone forgot. There are communities in this country and around the world that never stopped raising goats on brush, and their results confirm everything the suppressed research predicted. In the hill country of central Texas, a network of Spanish goat ranchers maintained continuous herds through every decade of the 20th century, selling primarily to the ethnic food markets in Houston and San Antonio that never lost their demand for Chauvin. One family in Kimball County, operating on 200 acres of cedar-choked rangeland that no cattle rancher would touch, documented a 22-year average annual net income of $34,000 from their goat operation, with total annual input costs below $3,100. Their land, which neighboring ranchers called worthless, was outperforming improved cattle pasture by a factor of 3 on a per-acre profit basis. In the mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico, indigenous Zapotec families have raised Creole goats, direct descendants of the original Spanish imports, on arid hillsides for over 400 years. Their herds require no supplemental feed, no veterinary care, and no housing other than simple brush corrals. A 2011 study by researchers at the Universidad Autónoma de Chapingo found that these families produced an average of 97 pounds of meat and 260 liters of milk per acre per year on land receiving less than 18 inches of annual rainfall. In eastern Kentucky, Old Order Mennonite communities maintained myotonic goat herds through the entire period of industrial consolidation, using them not only for meat and milk, but as biological land clearers. One community near Irvine documented the transformation of 45 acres of abandoned strip mine land into productive silvopasture over a 12-year period, using nothing but goats in a rotation schedule. The soil organic matter on that land increased from 1.1% to 4.3%. No fertilizer, no machinery, no cost beyond the animals themselves, and the time to move portable fencing. These are not stories from some utopian farming magazine. These are measured outcomes from people who simply refuse to abandon what worked. So here is how you begin. And I want to be precise because precision is what separates knowledge from entertainment. Your first step is acquiring the right animals. You are looking for myotonic cross or Spanish-type goats, not purebred show stock. You can find them through the Myotonic Goat Registry, or by searching local livestock auctions in Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, or the Ozark region. A good breeding doe will cost you between $75 and $200. A proven buck, $100 to $250. Start with 4 does and 1 buck. That is your foundation herd. Total investment under $900, and in most regions you can find them for half that. Your second step is fencing, and this is where most people fail, so pay attention. Goats do not respect barbed wire. They do not respect wooden rail fences. They barely respect woven wire. What works is electric net fencing, portable units that run on a small solar-powered charger. You can buy 164 feet of 42-inch Electronet for about $120. A solar charger runs another $80. 3 rolls of net fencing will contain your starter herd on roughly a quarter-acre paddock, and you will move that paddock every 3 to 5 days depending on browse density. This rotational approach is not optional. It is the core of the system. The goats eat the brush down in one area. You move them. The browsed area regenerates, and within 90 days it produces fresh growth that is higher in protein and lower in lignin than the original mature brush. You are improving your land while feeding your animals. This is the cycle that industrial agriculture does not want you to understand because it eliminates the need for their products. Your third step is breeding management. Spanish and myotonic does cycle naturally in the fall. Introduce your buck in September and expect kids in late February or early March. The does will handle everything. These are not fragile dairy animals that need assistance. Heritage Meat Goat does deliver unassisted, clean their kids, and have them nursing within 20 minutes. Your average kidding rate will be 1.8 kids per doe per year. Some singles, some twins, an occasional triplet. By midsummer, those kids will weigh between 45 and 60 pounds. A 55-pound kid at 5 months old will dress out at approximately 33 pounds of hanging carcass weight, yielding about 22 pounds of cut and wrapped meat. That is the moment you will understand what has been kept from you. You raised 22 pounds of lean, nutrient-dense meat on land that was doing nothing, from an animal that ate plants you did not want, and your total feed cost was zero. When you open your freezer and see those neatly wrapped packages of chiffon, the ones your family will grill, stew, smoke, and roast through the winter, you will feel something shift inside your understanding of what is possible. The most common objection I hear is about flavor. People have been told that goat meat tastes strong or gamey. That is true only if you butcher an old buck and rut. A young kid, harvested at 5 to 7 months of age, produces meat that is mild, finely grained, and remarkably similar to lamb. Marinated overnight in olive oil, garlic, and rosemary. Slow roast it at 325 degrees for 3 hours. Your family will not believe it came from your back pasture. Within 2 years of starting, your 4-doe operation will have grown to 10 or 12 does through retained daughters. At that scale, on as few as 5 acres of brushy ground, you will be producing 350 to 450 pounds of dressed meat per year. At retail equivalent value, that is between $3,500 and $5,000 worth of meat annually from land that was costing you nothing but property tax. But the meat is only the doorway. Once you understand the goat as a systems animal rather than a single product livestock, every other piece of your homestead begins to click into place. The goat's brush clearing ability means that within 3 to 4 years, your overgrown woodland margins become open silvopasture, the ideal environment for integrating free-range poultry. Chickens following goats through a rotated paddock system scratch apart the goat manure, spreading it evenly and consuming the fly larvae and internal parasite eggs that would otherwise reinfect the herd. The chickens get a significant portion of their protein from those insects, reducing your poultry feed costs by 30 to 40%. The goats get natural parasite management without chemical dewormers. Both animals are healthier. Your land is more productive. Nobody sold you anything. The same principle extends to orchards and food forests. Goats are the most efficient biological tool available for managing the understory beneath fruit and nut trees. They remove competing brush, deposit fertility directly at the root zone, and their browsing stimulates the kind of edge habitat growth that supports pollinator populations. If you are planning to plant chestnuts, persimmons, mulberries, or hazelnuts, goats are not an addition to that system. They are the foundation of it. The Korean natural farming tradition, which has quietly produced some of the most productive small farms in East Asia for over 900 years, integrates goats into its orchard management in exactly this way. Master Cho Han-kyu, the modern architect of Korean natural farming, described the goat as the animal that makes all other systems possible on marginal land. His students in the Philippines and Hawaii have documented 60% reductions in orchard establishment costs simply by using goats to clear, fertilize, and maintain their planting sites. And there is a third dimension that almost no one discusses. Goat milk, even from meat-type breeds producing only a quart or 2 per day, is the foundation of artisan cheese production. A single doe giving 1 quart per day for a 7-month lactation produces enough milk for approximately 35 pounds of hard cheese. Aged chèvre, feta, and Tom-style cheeses from goat milk command $14 to $28 per pound at farmers markets. Your meat animal is also your dairy animal, is also your land clearing machine, is also your orchard manager. This is the kind of integrated multi-output system that industrial agriculture cannot replicate and cannot compete with. That is precisely why you were never taught it. There is a reason that the knowledge you just received does not appear in any modern extension bulletin, any mainstream farming magazine, or any agricultural curriculum at any land-grant university in this country. It is the same reason it has always been. When you can feed yourself from your own land using an animal that eats what nothing else will eat, on ground that nothing else will use, without buying grain, without buying chemicals, without buying equipment, without asking permission or paying rent to the system that profits from your dependence, you become something that no industry can tolerate. You become unnecessary to them. And when you are unnecessary to them, they are unnecessary to you. That is the equation they have spent 50 years trying to keep you from solving. Your grandparents knew this animal. Your great-grandparents built their farms around it. The knowledge was not lost because it stopped working. It was buried because it worked too well. The land you have right now, whatever shape it is in, however rough, however neglected, however many times you have been told it is not good enough for real farming, that land is ready. The animal that matches it has been waiting for you to find out the truth. Now you have.